Hello everyone. This is now an introductory presentation linked to our event Fit for SME. The whole idea of the event is that many Interreg programs across Europe are very hesitant to take small and medium-sized enterprises on board as beneficiaries. On the other hand, there are a couple of cross-border as well as transnational programs who actually have lots of projects where SMEs act as beneficiaries. And today we have Till Seyer from the Germany-Netherlands program, and they have collected ample experience with working with SMEs, and they have developed also their own, let's say, quite smart management model, how projects, or let's say how small and medium-sized enterprises willingly enter Interreg projects. Because in many cases, enterprises are very hesitant to even join projects due to the heavy administrative load linked with an Interreg project. So welcome, Till. Thanks for helping us, providing us information.
Thank you very much. Yes, basically, engaging SME in cross-border projects has been an issue for us as well over the last years. I think we did face the same challenges, the same barriers that most other programs have faced or are currently facing. So what I would like to do in the next minutes is to give you some idea about how did we approach this challenge of engaging SME into cross-border projects. I shall look at 4 basic questions in this presentation. First one is, why should we engage SME at all? Then introduce our approach as a program to you. Then I shall briefly address the question of state aid, because what I've heard from many programs is that this is one specific issue that makes the programs hesitant of approaching SME. And as the last question, I shall share some of our experiences with the approaches that we did take. Briefly about the state aid part, my colleague who is more an expert on state aid is currently ill. So I try my best to give you some general idea of how we solve this issue for our program, but I'm not really a state aid expert. So first of all, why should we engage SME at all? Traditionally, maybe it's the same with a lot of other programs. Our program was mainly focused on public bodies, on universities and all these kinds of partners for the cross-border project. But over the last years, as the political objectives of the European Commission also concerning the cross-border cooperation programs changed, when we're talking about knowledge transfer and all these things, SME did become way more important for us. If we look at our specific border area, and I think that counts for a lot of border areas across Europe, is that these areas are somewhat economically less developed than the metropolitan areas and all these big agglomeration areas. So economic development is one of the major driving factors in our area. And when we look at the situation, we don't have that many huge companies, multinationals sitting here. So SME are the main economic drivers in our area. We cannot really change a lot economically without engaging SME. And also, looking from our traditional perspective, working together with universities, having projects with universities and all these kinds of knowledge institutions, SME are the main partner when it comes to knowledge transfer, to transfer the academic knowledge into the business field, into the economics. When we did a strategic analysis of our program, we found out that some 55,000 companies that are located in our program area some 95% are actually really SME. So our idea was, if we want to do something in the economic sector, in the area of knowledge transfer, we cannot do it without SME. Of course, for programs like ours, it's not easy to really be attractive for SME, and there's also some, at least potential risk when engaging them. When it comes to attractiveness, we all know that, especially in the past, the subsidy rules of our programs were pretty difficult and required a lot of administrative effort from the projects. And whereas bigger public organizations are probably pretty easily able to handle it, the SME have limited capacity, especially when it comes to administrative staff with knowledge of subsidy situations and all these things, as SME traditionally, of course, focus on their day-to-day business. Also, there is, at least pretty often, no established cross-border network between the SME and SME from the other side of the border, in our case, as a cross-border network. So that makes it kind of difficult for the partners or the potential partners, the SME, to actually set up a cross-border project when there is no known potential partner from the other side of the border. So that's basically what we figured out when we looked at the situation of SME and why they were hesitant to engage in projects in our program. So in the last years, what we did was, together with a couple of regional stakeholders, develop an approach that we call open projects. All projects that we set up to try to engage SME need to be simple for the applicants. That's the first issue that we figured out. That if it's too difficult to apply, if the companies have to put too much effort in an application which might in the end be rejected, they will not join or set up any projects in our program. So first of all, as we always say, like, simplification is absolutely essential. It's not just something that we see as crucial for engaging SME. It's an overall program issue that I think that small and medium enterprises are most sensitive to the impact of simplification. The other step, as I said, are the open projects. What does that mean for us? Basically, it means there is a larger project set up and managed by usually regional development agencies, universities, and other stakeholders with an existing network and a specific task concerning economic boost in the area. So what they do is they manage the overall Interreg project, and they use their networks to engage SME from both sides of the border. Traditionally, we would have at least two, often it's like 4, even 5 of these agencies, universities, and other partners with existing networks on both sides of the border to set up sort of a consortium of core partners. I shall show that to you on the next slide. And what these open projects do, and this will become more important later when you look at issues like state aid and all these things, is that they set up a standardized approach for applicants in this specific open project. What does that mean is that they first of all focus on a specific area of technology or business. So we have a couple of open projects. One is, if we have an example, focused on digitalization. Another one is focused on food technology. Then there is one concerning health sciences. So we have open projects for specific business sectors in our program area. And when they apply, for the overall project, they also provide us with a standardized approach. For example, which companies are allowed to participate in this open project. What's the minimum requirements? For example, from our side, it's always that it should be always cross-border activities, but some have others, like that it has to be specifically rooted in a business field, like surface technologies, for example. So what they do is they provide us with their approach towards the way of dealing with potential activities and applicants. As I said, we have a couple of these open projects and they are not all constructed in the same way. However, I've tried to set up like a standard scheme of how the open projects look like to give you some more impression. As I said, we have the core partners. They are the lead beneficiary and some other networking partners that form the central consortium of the project. They apply for it and provide us with their plan how to carry out SME activities in a specific area. What we always require them to do is set up a project steering committee, a formal project steering committee that does also include at least one program representative from our side to monitor the progress of this open project and have some more steering capacity from our side when it comes to the decision on applicants, the application of state aid rules and all these things, and also the dissemination of results, of course. So after having set up this project, the steering committee will start to decide upon activities. The core partners will advertise the potential of their open project in their specific networks. Then they apply applicants. That always works pretty well for us. And then the applicants can apply for different activities. As I said before, it's always got to be at least 2 SME working together in any activity, and these 2 SME have to be from both sides of the border. So every single activity has to be cross-border related. The activities that we usually see in the open project is, for example, a feasibility study on a specific technology topic or something like that. We also have development projects where demonstrators, for example, are developed or business cases are elaborated. Most of the open projects actually have like a 2 or sometimes 3-step system where any SME, or a consortium of 2 or more SME wanting to engage in the activities, they first would apply for a feasibility study. They would get a specific amount for carrying out this feasibility study. Once this has been successful, they can apply for the next phase. For example, development of a demonstrator. And again, the steering committee would decide whether this activity is worth receiving subsidy. And then they would go on, usually for the second stage, there are some more funds allocated to the activities. When we're talking about figures here, I'd usually say that for the feasibility studies, it's something like between 5 to 15,000 euros subsidy that they would receive as a maximum. For the development projects, it's usually between 25 to 50,000 euros subsidy. We have some 6, 7, 8 of these projects, and all of them are running quite well. Our ideal scenario is, of course, always to have these projects, these development projects, after they have finished within the open project, engage in some regular Interreg projects, so that they would feel confident enough with their now established network and their now received knowledge about how our program works for SME, that they would by themselves dare to apply for a regular larger project, a couple of million euros, for example. We have as I said, we thought a lot about how are we going to deal with the state aid issue. When you look at the structure that I just introduced, the program as a whole, our monitoring committee decides only on the general project. So after that, the acquisition of the SME partners for the singular activities is basically done by the project steering committee. So that also means that when we decide upon the grant, we do not know the partners. And this, of course, is an issue when it comes to state aid, as we have to make a decision without knowing the actual partners. So that's why it's so important for us that at application stage of the open project, we agree upon clear regulations for the project, who can participate. This is what I mean here when I talk about standardized solutions. Then we say, for example, only SME, according to the European system of evaluating whether an organization is an SME, may apply and participate. All the activities have to be in a specific field of research and development, for example. And this makes it quite easy for us to say, okay, all applicants that come to the project can receive state aid based on a specific JIBA article. So that we do not really have to make a specific state aid check for each applicant, because when applying, they have to fulfill the specific requirements based on JIBA. I think it's like this R&D article 20, I believe. I'm not really sure about that. So that means that we generally fit most of the participating SME under a JIBA article that has been agreed with the project beforehand. And generally, they only have one option. The other alternative is, of course, to just use de minimis. We sometimes use that for example, for the feasibility studies and all these things, because that's a little easier to just apply and say, okay, when they apply for a subsidy for a feasibility study, we just use a de minimis declaration to give them the grant. So what I basically want to say is that by clearly setting up beforehand what are the regulations for the specific open projects, we can solve a lot of these state aid issues. So with all that in mind, what are our experiences? As I said, we have several open projects within SME focus. All of them are running quite well. We don't have any problems with expanding or with engaging partners there, because they're pretty attractive. They provide, in general, we provide 50% subsidy to the SME, which is more than they would generally receive within national subsidy programs in our case. Yeah. So that makes it quite attractive for them, and with a lot of simplification that we introduced, plus the central management and advisory provided by the core partners in the open project, it's pretty low barrier for the SME. What we also see in this program period is that we have a lot of SME partners in regular projects that did engage in these sort of open projects in the last programming phase. So we see this sort of transfer more and more from, okay, we've tried Interreg within an open project, and now we feel confident enough to engage in regular projects, sometimes even as a lead beneficiary. This all results that at the moment we have with the open and the regular projects, some 1,500 SME actively involved in our projects as beneficiaries. One example, which we are currently working with, is which I want to provide you, is a really nice project that has just done this transition. They engaged in one of the open projects in the area of digitalization, like 2 years ago in one of the open projects, and they went with 3 other partners to the phases of feasibility study, and then they developed demonstrator. It's like a urine sensor that you can like mount in your toilet at home, which is really important for elderly people that are receiving healthcare at home, so that the caregivers, they can really easily check the health status of their patients without having to do a lot of stuff. It's just the sensor mounted in the toilet, and they can easily check all the different parameters. And yeah, they were successful with this demonstrator, and after that, one SME, which never engaged into in subsidy projects before, felt confident enough to set up their own partnership as a lead beneficiary, and they're currently working really successfully on a regular Interreg project, and we're receiving a substantial amount of subsidy there. And what we see there is, and that's why we also really like SME as partners, they value subsidy way more than our traditional partners. When we go to universities and tell them, hey, we give you like 70% of subsidy for cross-border projects, they would be complaining and like, oh, it's not enough, and oh, it's also difficult. And when we go to the SME, they're like, oh, it's so great that you appreciate what we are doing, and we receive 50% of subsidy, and that's so fantastic, and everything. So, and they are really like good partners. What we see, they're really striving to reach their goals because they have their own interest in that. And what we also see is that the SME projects are much more hands-on generally. So that gives us a way better opportunity to communicate the benefits and all these the positive aspects of our program to the broader public and to the stakeholders. So yeah, what I basically want to tell you is be not afraid to engage SME. It's from our perspective, from our experiences, it's not more difficult, and there is no higher actual risk. If you assess it properly at the beginning, there's no higher risk than you would have with any other project partners. So thank you very much for your online attention. I don't know if you have any questions.
From our side, big thanks to you, Till, for presenting your experience. And I can confirm that your approach to open projects and the partnership light for SMEs has met interest in the Interreg community, because I've been approached several times after you have had, or your colleague Albert has had the presentation in Prague early last year. So I can really confirm that there is interest, and I've noted that it seems to be a good entry for SMEs to try and test Interreg, and it seems that some of them, as you've put it, found it a very good experience and would like to continue. So thanks a lot, Till, and see each other on May 19.
Thank you.